Have this meeting. We'll call to order the meeting today, and that's the July 9th HDRB meeting. We'll ask staff to come up and we're gonna have to probably delay the minutes again, but we'll talk about the minutes. There's not enough people here to hold the minutes from last meeting, so we're gonna hold off again,
Or the one from one before that.
maybe the one before that even. So we're gonna start stacking them up. But see if there's an agenda in here somewhere. All right, let's see. No, that was last night's meeting.
Here's this one.
1405 Duke Street.
Okay, this first request is at 1405 Duke Street, and it's a request to build a screen-in porch at the rear of the property. And in the time that this went out on Thursday and over the 4th of July weekend, it was discovered, I think, by HBF that they hold an easement on this property, and that easement requires the applicant to obtain approval before they make any exterior changes. And HBF has not granted that approval. And so I think staff would recommend deferral at this time, just because I think if you act on it, there could be some vesting, and it's something that could become challenging for the applicant, should you act on it, right? And they don't give that approval. I can go forward with it all. I think Mr. Nash is here, or I think he actually left. But I think it would probably be best to defer it. And I would defer, if you have any questions about what HBF is looking for to lease. But, essentially, as we see this, like if it was your property, you wouldn't really have the authority to bring that application until you got that approval. So we just don't want to create any legal quandaries for them. It's a pretty simple request, so I'm sure this can be worked out by next month. But with that, since it was on the agenda, we would just recommend deferral.
The motion from the board.
I don't necessarily agree with that logic. I think he has to get approval from both to proceed. So whether he goes to HBF first and then us, or us and then HBF, kind of is no consequence. If he gets approval from us, let's say, that still does not supersede his conservation easement. He still needs to get approval from HBF, otherwise he's in violation of that easement. So I don't think there's any harm in discussing it and talking about it.
All right, before we go any further with this, let's get a motion on the table. To even to continue with the topic, so we can debate that merits of that.
Do we need a motion to follow the agenda? We would need a motion
Well,
to not.
there's a couple questions. First of all, the applicant walked out of here. So he's
Oh, I
not
see.
here. So I mean, if he's here and you want to entertain that, I'd like to get a motion to open it up, and we could do that, but he's not here.
Yeah, so he can't even present his own.
Seems like a little muddied water to me, but it's sad that, these are the kind of things we need to talk about.
Yeah, again, this came up, I think, in the day before this meeting. And so we did send him an email, but I think he didn't read his email.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Lisa, I didn't really want to get into the debate or questions about easements and process and.
That's not what we did. That was actually the reason that it needed to be deferred originally, and because our committee could not review it because we brought the information in yesterday, and our committee does not have a chance.
Well, that's your organization.
Process.
Yeah, but I think, this is what we do for.
I don't have a
You
problem.
had a home and in a HOA, we just don't want to create a situation that could be detrimental to the applicant, certainly,
Yeah, I also don't want to create an unofficial process that requires everyone to go through HTRC and HBF. I think that there's a lot of value to HTRC and HBF, but I don't want that to become the unofficial rule.
No, and I don't think we're saying that at all. It's just they do hold an easement that states that they have to approve.
Right, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying, I think the other piece that you were talking about, Mr. Chairman, is he's not even here to present, so that by itself, I think, is enough reason to defer. But the original point, I still stand
Well,
behind,
the,
so.
the merits of the problem that came to us now, we need to discuss without it being a particular application.
Hmm.
Right? In other words, I'd like to hear some process issues discussed, but not about this particular project. But but I would like to talk about like how easements are relate to the process, how it gets to HTRC. That's not brought up until it actually gets on the agenda and we come to hear it. And then it's told 2 days later, well, HTRC was many weeks ago. So
Yeah, it was, obviously, we
It
did
shows the
not know it was on, we did not know there was an easement, staff did not know, and, it was a good HTRC meeting, and
Well,
so.
I can make a motion to defer this, and then we can, at the end of these, we
I
can
think
come
we can
back
have
to
an
this
open,
topic.
well, we'll open the floor to discussion and then maybe other questions will come up about that, but I'd love to talk about it, yes.
So,
the
okay,
end.
so yep. Okay, so I'll make a motion to defer, the 1405 Duke Street project, to some time to be determined in the future. And then we'll also discuss, some process stuff at the end of this hearing.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further questions? Not seeing any or debate. Call the vote. I'll support it.
Aye.
All right, so we deferred that till some future date for the reasons listed. All right, we'll go ahead and bring up the second second agenda item.
That was quick.
Yeah, they all should be quick.
There. All right, I'll be covering 605 Carteret Street and the other application that is 807 Scott Street. So 605 Carteret Street has been to the HTRC on June 11th. They put in their HTRC application on May 23rd. You'll find a project timeline in your staff report. So the request here is to change the exterior paint color of the house, of the siding. That includes the color change of the current shutters. The main item is a new front door. So to replace the front door, it was a law firm, Graber Law Firm at one time. Mr. Graber Senior has retired, so it no longer is a law firm, as I understand, correct? So the applicants, Zach and Rihanna Graber, want to change it to a more residential door. The door has some issues, safety concerns, and so forth, and we'll get into that. And finally, also to install gutters around the roof line. They had a re-roof done not too long ago. That was an administrative review process. They did an in-kind re-roof, but when the roofer came in, he actually submitted also gutters that were not in keeping with the preservation manual. They were like the K-style gutters that are actually, that we don't want to see in the historic district. So we just attached that to this application here. So going through the slides, the location is Carteret Street, in the right smack downtown. You can see pictures here on the left-hand side is what it currently looks like. They still have Graber Law Firm sign on the building. You see an historic picture from 1997 from the last historic inventory survey, kind of in black and white, which kind of gives you a good impression on the door back then as well. So the door really hasn't changed too much. It's a traditional, typical Beaufort front door. It has the side lights. It has a transom window above. It has, it's your typical 3/4 glass window front door with panels at the bottom. So zoning map, it's zoned T4 neighborhood, T4N. It's located in the Point on that side of Carteret. It's part of the Point neighborhood. Looking at pictures that the applicant took of the door, I kind of did a little, collage of them. You can see the door, especially the hinges on the bottom. It's kind of, it's been in service for so many years. I guess it's just wear and tear that you can see. You can see a little gap in, up on the rail, the top of the door between the transom and the frame, door jamb frame. It doesn't really close properly anymore. there are some issues with the lock panel, the lock itself. It really has issues with securely closing. It's just, I guess it's come to an age where you would just need a new door, especially with the clients that came in and out of it all these years. So the items to be changed, number one, the exterior color. This is the color that they're proposing for the siding. It's called Extra White from Sherwin-Williams, numbers 7006. That's what it will look like. Our staff recommendation, as well as anybody that has been on the HTRC before, likes the color. It's befitting to the neighborhood. It matches the proposed new color of the shutters, which will be tricorn black very well. It's a classic look, the black, the white and the black. There are apparently also pictures of the house being that kind of color scheme in the past one time, so it's very befitting to the neighborhood. This is the color of the shutters, tricorn black, as well as the door will be this color as well. It fits perfectly with the white siding of the house. So no issues there. There are two quotes that the applicant has gotten through from Graco for the door, the new door. It's, as I said, it's a 3/4 glass door. So it's 3/4 of the door that is glass panels, or a glass window basically. Either with a one lower panel, which is horizontal, or two vertical panels below at the bottom. So it's either or. Staff basically it doesn't have any issues with either. So it's really up to y'all for discussion, but both doors would work well in that kind of environment, in that setting. So in closing of this request, as you know, we look at the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. One of the criteria that stands out and that they definitely are in keeping is that the historic character of the house will not be negatively touched. It will be retained. It will be preserved. None of the significant design architectural features will be touched. The shutters won't be exchanged. It's basically only the replacement of the door, but it will be replaced in keeping with the style of the house and the neighborhood. So that checks off. If you look at the Beaufort Preservation Manual, in Chapter 10, it talks about doors specifically. It basically says, if you're doing infill development or any major, rehab on buildings on the historic districts, panel doors would be always the appropriate type of door in the historic district. Looking at the gutters and downspouts, it's recommended to use half-round sheet metal gutters or round downspouts. In your staff report, under staff recommendation, where is it at? Under 1, basically, I said that staff would be most supportive of a half-round aluminum or copper gutter system with a plain round or rectangular downspout. The K-style gutters, as I mentioned before, and corrugated downspouts are considered inappropriate for the historic district. And in closing, the painting in Chapter 4, so HRB usually has a clear mandate of reviewing proposed alterations, in such an exposed location as Carteret Street, especially when it comes to color changes of the exterior. But we're supportive of it because the color schemes are actually very neutral and classic in style. So with that, we would recommend final approval of all of these proposed alterations. One of the conditions is that they would need to show us what kind of option of door, after discussing with you, they would like to go with. And also what kind of gutters they will implement as well. So in that was basically my presentation to you for that.
Great.
Questions?
Now, at this point, we may call you back up. At this point, would ask the applicant if they'd like to say anything. Staff is supporting this. You have any comments you want to add that was not said by staff? You're welcome to come up and. Okay. All right. Well, good. We'll move on to public, the public part of the process where we'll bring the public up and look like Ms. Sunderland from HPF is at the podium.
Hello, Miss Angela, Historic Beaufort Foundation. Thank you, sir. We had the opportunity to meet with Rihanna on Friday with our Preservation Committee and to meet with them also with the HTRC and are in support of staff's comments. The one item that we did share with them that we felt would be more in keeping with the style of the house was not to choose the white paint color with the black surrounds around the window. The building was built circa 1880 in a similar style and form as to our Rainbow Row by George Holmes on Craven Street. And you see during that vernacular period of our Victorian style, more of a pastel coloring that happens with the houses. And so they're aware that that would be our preference for the direction of it in keeping with the style of the house. Otherwise, we agree with the rest of staff's comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sunderland. Any other public comment from the audience? How about anybody online would like to talk about this?
Nobody online, sir.
We welcome all you internet people out there if you want to talk. All right, we'll close the public hearing and bring it up to the podium for us to discuss the merits of this. So it looks like a front door, a gutter, and a paint job.
Yep. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. My only question I have is that I'm not familiar with the framing on the house. The cut sheet for the doors called for a 4 9/16 door. Just make sure it's a 2x4 framing instead of a 2x6 framing, because then it'll be too small on that. But I thought,
Yeah, you don't have to answer it yet, but.
there's nothing for you to do with that. It's just, if you get a 4 9/16 door jam, it'll be too small for a 2x6 framed exterior. In that case, you would want a 6 9/16 jam. So just make sure the jam fits.
Yeah, and the issue though, really though, is that the age of these houses, the timbers are actual dimension materials, so you're not gonna get a jam that's gonna fit it exactly anyways. So even the larger jam, so what you can end up doing is pulling that door to the outside, doing the trim that matches and doing an extension jam on the interior and wrapping the door to fit your interior desire, right? So
Whoever your carpenter is, just
they
make
need to
sure
know
they
that,
what
'cause
they're
don't be
doing.
surprised if you get a real fat jam, then you gotta get somebody to chop it down is the big, it's happened, but it's a problem, right?
Other than that, I don't see anything wrong with this project. I think it's real easy.
Get a motion on the table?
So moved. Yeah, well, I do have one comment. They have two options with the lower panel, either one panel or two vertical panels. It looks like the existing door is two vertical panel. So to me, the vertical panels seem to be more in keeping with the portion of the house. I would recommend that out of those two options, they go with the two lower panels being the vertical
You
orientation.
can make that direction at this point.
That would be I'd move to support the staff with that caveat that I would suggest or recommend those two panels, there'd be two vertical panels on the lower part of the door.
I'm fine with that.
Fine with either, or you like the two panels?
I'm fine with either, but if the two panels gets us to a yes more expediently, then
you hard
I'm
on
more in
that?
favor of
You
that.
know,
That's a recommendation. I mean, just, again, it's a small house, it seemed like that. And unless I'm mistaken, it's what's on the house now. Not this.
Okay.
But that would be I would not make that a part of my motion. That is my suggestion.
It is.
How about, we haven't got a formal motion yet up here, but let's talk about, I mean, I'm okay with just as it is, just like the doors, and I'm agreeing with your comment to Mr. Woods. The paint color, I'm okay with white. I like the concept that HBF presented, that the time period and offers, if the owners didn't know that about the paint, and they know now, is that something that they can consider? And we'd let staff make an approval on a color change from white if it stays in a pastel pattern. In other words, that's where I would go with the motion. So if I drove by 2 months from now and it was a light shade of beautiful salmon that matched Rainbow Row, I wouldn't have a heartache with that. If it's white, I wouldn't have a heartache with that. Right? These are some options.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I would want to phrase it, if we added something like that, I wouldn't want to create churn by doing something like that, where we have something that we're okay with now. I wouldn't want to. What is,
Well, we can,
what is this saying? Put a stick of a cog in the wheel or something?
kink in the
Whatever.
gut, yeah.
But so basically what I'm saying is, I would approve it as is, maybe with the condition that we recommend the 2-panel. And that if they chose separately to switch to a pastel, that could be approved at staff level, but that does not preclude them from executing this plan as presented.
well, that's how I visualize it. So we're time for a motion, a clarified motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with staff recommendations with the addition that the 2 vertical panel door was recommended, and that we're approving it as it is presented. But that if the applicant decides to switch exterior paint colors to a pastel palette, that could get approved at the staff level, but that it's not required.
All right, with motion and second on the table.
Aye.
Aye. Right. So we close you guys out. You're golden to do whatever it is you're trying to do, to be one of our urban pioneers. Yeah, I guess that's the term. I mean, moving back into town, we've been trying to get that to happen in the city forever.
They're such urbanites.
Come
over there.
back, young people too, so they like, come back. So-
45-year-old man, I'll take you out first.
All right,
It's been lovely being back. Thank you.
all right. All right, we're gonna move on to the last agenda item. 807 Scott Street.
Okay, so 807 Scott Street is in the Old Commons neighborhood. They have been to a HTRC before, as you should be able to see in your staff report. June 4th was the meeting, actually. So their request for this structure, which is actually from 1885, it's a contributing structure in the Old Commons neighborhood, is also for exterior changes, including new paint color. Actually, a palette of new colors, including exterior siding, trim, shutters, and windows and doors. So we'll get into that. Also, relocation of a rear door, then some new windows on the sides of the house. So we're talking new windows as well as shifting existing door/window on the rear, since there are some interior remodifications of a master bedroom, I understand, in the back. So, but we're only looking at the exterior here today, and also a screened-in enclosure. If I shouldn't have covered something, I hope the applicant will help me out here. All right. So the location here, as you can see on the map, is Old Commons neighborhood. It's not too far from Carteret's, actually 1 block over, basically. Street view, this is the street view today on the left-hand side. It's very ornate. It has very nice ornate woodwork on the 2nd floor, columns on the underside of the eaves. So it's a very nice looking house. It's very historic. It's very contributing. It's really a beautiful house. You can see a historic picture of this this home from 1979 when they first did the historic inventories here in Beaufort. It really hasn't changed much other than the trees have grown up a little bit around it and such. So with this, the zoning is T4HN, Historic Neighborhood District. And I'll just jump into the conceptual plans that were presented to me by Miriam Kaufman, who is the architect for Mr. Feldman, the owner. So you're looking here at, on the left-hand side at the rear view and on the right-hand side at the front. So most of the changes are happening at the rear, okay? So you're looking at also the screen and porch that will be added. Here, you will be looking also, I'm not sure if really shows up too well. But basically the rear door that goes out to the back porch area will be shifted to the left, so towards the west, I guess, if you're looking at it. Instead of where the door is now, there will be a window put in. I'm gonna go down the plans. So looking here at the sides of the house, on the top, you see the current condition. They will be adding a second window on the first floor in the middle of the house, on the side of the plane there, on one side as well as on the other side. So you see how they're adding a third window in between the two, on the first floor as well on the other side of the house. Let me see. You're looking on the right-hand side, you're also looking at the rear of the house, and so you see where on the top, there's center rear door and there's a window on either of the side of the door. They're planning to shift that existing door to the left where the window is and take that window and have where the door was before, currently, put a window in there. So Mrs. Kaufman will probably explain that in more detail to you, but just to kind of highlight what's going on here, okay?
You go back one.
Sure.
Was this included in our packet? I did not see these elevations in our packet.
Have not?
It was this much.
Yeah, but it didn't show the south and east in that.
It didn't show this one though.
Yeah, okay. Well, good. So it's good that we're showing it now.
It's actually, if you look at this page here, do you have this one?
That's the other side. That's not the south and east. That's the north and west.
Sheet A21, right. So north, the north elevation.
And the west.
This one?
It's not.
The south elevation is on the next page.
I know west is, but this shows east and south. There was no south and east,
Well,
at least not in my packet. I have a north and a west, no south and east.
east and west, so east elevation is basically the rear of the house.
Yep.
West is the front, and the sides of the house is basically is north and south. So,
No, I'm tracking. I'm saying that because the east elevation was the one that was important to see, and it wasn't included in the packet. The west elevation was, which was
Oh.
not relevant.
say what?
I mean, I see it now, so we can just keep moving.
Okay, good, all right. Okay. So, here's a good overview sheet as well. You should have this in your packet too. So it basically has pictures of the current house on the top. In the middle section, you will see. So in the middle section, you see two pictures. The left-hand one is from the front, that's the front door, that's not changing. On the right, that's the rear door, where you see the small door and there's a window to either sides. That door is basically going to be moved to the left, okay? So that small rear porch door is the one that's going to be moved to the left of it. That window that's currently there, may be reused or may not, I'm not sure. It will be reused. So the window that they're taking out, that is there where the door is going to be, will be actually moved to one of the sides of the house. Where the door is now, there's going to be a new window in there, okay? Also, you can see a picture of the existing north elevation where new windows will be, where that window will be placed in, so.
It wasn't in my packet, but
So that's the doors, that's the windows, and the color palettes that the applicant would like to pursue. You can see on this overview sheet too. So on the left top, it's called Aunt Betty's China. It's gonna be the new or the proposed siding color for the house. The right of it, top right is Charleston White. They want to use that color for trims, the columns, the railings, and so forth. On the left bottom, Cooper Spason is kind of like it's like a bluish grayish color. They want to use that color for decking, the porch decking. And the historic Charleston green on the bottom right is to be used for doors. So that's the color palette that they're proposing to do. The windows actually, or let's talk about the door first. So the door, there's a spec here. It says it's called Therma True, or the company is called Therma True Doors. Understand it's a fiberglass from the material fiberglass door, 3/4 light glass panel. It has a bottom horizontal panel. It's flush glazed, grill style is simulated divided lights. And you can see the dimensions there. So that was what was submitted to us as a spec for the door. The windows they changed that. They've previously wanted to do windows, or the two windows from Windsor, which are PVC windows. We strongly discouraged from using any of that material within the district. So they now have changed to use Lincoln windows, which for the replacement windows, which are wooden windows. Just to let you know. And this is basically from the manufacturer, the specs on the windows. So you can see what, I think it's double hung windows in a 2/2 lights style. So in closing, with all this, looking at the Secretary of the Interior standards again for rehabilitation, the historic character of the property will be retained and preserved. So the main design features, historic design features, architectural design features of the house will not be destroyed, will not be replaced. We're talking about a door, a window, or two windows. Those will be in keeping with the Beaufort Preservation Manual. The painting is up to you, basically. We think that the palette chosen is actually, it's a befitting color scheme. It's not extraordinary. The colors don't really negatively stand out. So staff recommendation therefore would be final approval.
Thank you. If the applicant would like to speak to anything staff said or add to the conversation, you're welcome to come up and talk to us.
Thank you for the presentation. That was overall absolutely correct. The only thing that I think was in discussion with the review board previously on our June meeting, that the window on the back of the house on the east elevation is actually going to be relocated to the north side. And having the symmetry still matched with what's there currently, the screen door that's going to be moved to the screen porch that is currently on that existing full light door is going to still give us that symmetry. So we still have the 3 openings on the back, but that window is going to be completely moved to the north side.
Any way we can pull up that rear elevation? The picture, not the drawing. Yeah, that's good.
Yep. So, yes, so the door in the center of the rear elevation is gonna move to the left window location, and that window is gonna move to the north elevation where we are adding a window to what's gonna be a sitting area.
Okay. I'm gonna ask her a question, but I want the board to have any questions before I ask.
Well, you asked it, maybe it's a question.
We see a door in the spec sheet, yet we have an old door coming off. That's, you just said that's going back on. Are we using any new doors?
Well, that door is not original to the structure.
That's not the question.
Okay.
If you're taking the door out, are you using the door you're taking out to go back into where the window is?
No, the window, there's nothing going back into that same location.
Are you taking that door and moving it over to where the window is so you can actually make the access?
Yes,
The
yes.
same door?
No, not the same door.
Okay.
It's
gotcha.
the new door that we had on the spec sheet.
The intention is, you're saying the intention is not to reuse that door?
Correct. Yes.
Want to clarify that. The
Mhm.
window will get reused.
Yes, sir.
Is there a reason why you aren't proposing to reuse the door? Is it any reason not to?
Why not to reuse the door?
Yes, instead of buying a new door, that door can't be repurposed.
The client preferred that style door, and since the door is not historic, and original,
When you take the door out and you don't put anything back, you're gonna have to replace with siding. Is that gonna be an issue as far as leading, putting the siding back and that?
No, I don't think.
That's a rear addition on that house, just so you know. The whole back area was an add-on to begin with. So it's not part of the original fabric. So.
yeah, so as a matter of fact, the windows on the rear elevation are not original either.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Bring it up to board view. Anything else you'd like to let us know about?
Thank you.
All right, great. Well,
Thank you.
we'll open it to public comment and see what we have to hear.
Good afternoon, Lisa Sunderlow with Historic Beaufort Foundation. Had the pleasure to meet with Miriam with our Preservation Committee this week, and are supportive of staff's comments with the same caveat with regard to the color of the house. The house is circa 1885. It does have a distinctive bay window on it as well. And if you can go the direction of the pastel colors for the base, that we feel would be much more appropriate than the white. But a secondary opportunity is to do the white base and to highlight the trim with a pastel. So that could be a potential way to do it and to be able to bring it out. But thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sunderland. Any other public comment? No one online?
No, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll bring it up here for discussion. So just what I want to start off by saying, what I know about the house, the rear is an addition to that house. And the applicants made a comment like, very accurately, that the windows typically are may not be original. Well, that's Beaufort history. This house at 1885 and the Sanborn or the survey data says 1899, but it's very, somewhere in that time frame. Those look like 2/2 windows on all the windows in the house. And so it's appropriate to take that window and reuse it, which is great. As far as the door goes, we just like the earlier applicant, if you look close at the pictures we saw, that door didn't actually go to that building. It was modified to fit that building. And we do that, we still do that today, but it's not something we can, or I don't think we should force on people to try to make a door fit a hole that's never had that. But I think today we're going to be talking about the fact that it's existing, even though it was an addition, it's probably been there quite a few years. So anytime we talk about moving and opening or adding and opening, the way the guidelines speak to us is it needs to be able to be undone. And I think in this case, we've proven that those things can be undone. So it's not detrimental. In this case, I'm excited about the symmetry of adding the window on that north elevation in that location and not trying something different. In other words, that seems to be a balance that works. But you got to remember that is in the old part of the house. So what we have is the old window that's there now. And if you look at the corner board in the photograph that's up online, you'll see that there's a double set of windows back there in the existing kitchen. And so this will match that. And the other thing about this property is that's not seen from the street or the alley hardly. That's tucked in there. So some of these changes are subtle enough, I don't think they'd even be recognized. So I'm in supportive of the window relocation. And if you look at the floor plan on the interior, it lines up for kitchen use and it seems to be appropriate.
We'll need to rebuild the sill to match, because right now it's picture framed on the back.
The sills,
Yeah,
they'll have to
it's a
match it.
picture frame, yeah, they'll have to match.
Yeah, and that's in the typical method, and I don't know who your builder ultimately would be, but we typically ask them to try to replicate the thickness and shadow line and value of existing conditions, and it's something you cannot buy off the shelf, so somebody's have to custom make that and know what they're doing.
Did a good carpenter.
Yeah, I'm okay with the window as far as moving the door. I'm okay with moving the door in the back. Filling that in with siding. What was the other thing they wanted to do? I'm not crazy about the fiberglass door, but I get it. And Lincoln Company,
That's what they switched the windows
they
to.
shift the window, but we don't have a window. Is it the door we're shifting Lincoln to? You're making the door from Lincoln?
The doors Therma-Tru. The windows were a vinyl or a PVC product, and then they switched it to Lincoln, which is.
But they don't have a window to do.
There's another window that they're
There's
putting
two
in.
windows.
There's two windows on the other elevation, on the other side. There's
Can you go back to that one? So.
Ah.
Yeah,
So
that one.
there's one new there that's going in the center, which is,
Yeah.
in my opinion, is good symmetry. And then go to the next one.
Wait a minute.
And then this is the other one that's going in, that's in the kitchen. So one of them will be,
That's the one.
one of those openings will be repurposing the window from the rear. The other one is getting the Lincoln window. Is that accurate?
We're trying to shuffle some windows around. So for example, the window to the left of the front door and that hallway on the north elevation, you see at the top of the sheet, has been replaced as well at one point. It is a single pane, but it is a replacement window. So what we were trying to do is to make sure that we have a historic window next to a historic window and a replacement window next to a replacement window. We're trying to make sure that we're relocating to be located next to each other. And then, as I was talking to rep at Graco, it is difficult to get, unless they're custom made, a single pane wood window these days with energy efficiency and everything. So the Lincoln Windows has the true divided lights. So we would like to replace that window by the front door on the north elevation with that new insulated window so that it's in a singular location, and then have two existing replacement windows next to each other, and then all three historic windows next to each other.
On the south elevation.
On the south elevation, correct.
So can we number them or something?
Yeah, I can.
Can we just can you use the mouse and say, this one is going there, this one's going there, that one's going there?
I have
Well, the question I have is, what windows on the house now are insulated?
None of them are insulated. They're all single
Add
pane.
one next to an insulated window, to a non-insulated window.
But that's what we were trying to avoid.
No, if I understand correctly, they want to do a shuffle where old windows stay with old windows and new windows go with new windows.
Yeah.
So some of these, it sounds like here you can see, this is 1/1 that's newer. Some of these have been replaced over the years. And
Correct.
so they're gonna shuffle them around, so they put like with like. But which one specifically is an enigma to me right now?
So, yes, exactly. I understand. So the window on the north elevation that we're adding a second one to, we're trying to take this, that's original, that's a historic window. We're trying to take that out and locate that in between the two windows that are there to where we're gonna have the triple window.
So go to the slide before this, please.
Um,
Okay, so these on the south elevation, those tripled windows.
Yeah.
The one in the middle that you have an arrow to,
Yeah.
that one is coming from the rear.
That
That's
one,
the one that's getting
that one's
repurposed from
coming
the
from the
rear.
north side, that is historic. And that's gonna match the two historic ones that are already there.
Taking two off, what's that kind of?
But just relocating it in the same place, in the same house. We're not trying to eliminate any of them, we're trying to relocate them.
Let me phrase this way. On the north side, you have one opening now, and you want to put a second, but you're going to take the window that's there now, and you're going to move it with the one from the rear porch to the other side of the house.
No, just the original one from the north side to the south side, and the one from the back porch is going to the north side along with the other one from the front door.
None of this makes any sense. It sounds easy
So-
in your mind, I'm sure, but it's, I think I'm just as confused as Brian is. All right, so the confusion I'm having is we're talking about this Lincoln manufacturer, making a window. Is that gonna be a putty glazed single strength glass window, or is that gonna be an insulated glass window?
It is an insulated glass window.
And where on the house is there one like that?
I mean, they're all, I mean, it's a divided light window, but I don't have any insulated glass windows anywhere else.
If you're buying an insulated glass window to put on this house,
As we were just struggling to find a manufacturer with single or uninsulated glass.
well, Graco knows that Lincoln will sell you a window. They just don't like selling those windows
Oh, okay.
because it takes 7 weeks to get them if you're lucky.
Hmm.
You can buy them from Carolina Materials in Charleston.
Mhm.
And they'll make you a putty glazed single strength all pine window to
Okay.
match what you want.
All right.
Now, they don't make money on windows like that typically, so there hence the problem.
Mhm.
So who you ask is the important part. Now, so the question for our board is, these mixed matching windows are a little scary to me, especially on this particular house. This particular house is one of the few remaining houses with hand-laid plaster inside of it, and you've been in there, you know what I'm talking about. It's actually a museum quality interior at the moment. So we start mix matching pieces and parts. Now, we don't have preview on the interior, but it little scares me a little bit when we start cracking into walls and moving plaster around because we're gonna lose all that beautiful crown molding. All right? That's something I hope the owner really understands. Because if you get the wrong person in there, building a china shop,
Mhm.
the plaster's already cracked throughout that house, we're gonna lose it. But that's not our preview. I was pointing out that you're opening penetrations, you're gonna be causing wall movement, you're gonna be causing problems, but the windows, we're still confused exactly what you're doing, but my assumption is the rear porch windows go into the north side of the house to make the second window.
Mhm.
And then I go into the kitchen area now, and you got 2 existing windows there, and you wanna put one right in the middle of it, okay? Next to the bay window. That's the only single new window you're buying, right?
There's a single window we're
It'll go in
buying.
front of the kitchen sink, there'll be an old window here, an old window here, and a new window in the middle.
No.
No.
She wants to take both old windows from the rear porch and put them right here, so she has, no, not that either? Then I don't know.
That's weird.
But my takeaway is you're purchasing one new window in some form or fashion. You're mixing them up so that you can put like with like and unlike with unlike. But you're sticking with the Lincoln so that it matches the profile that's appropriate. I can get behind that conceptually enough to not worry about.
Yeah.
Well, I wanna get clarity on this just because, it's
Mhm.
not that it's gonna end up with probably changing
Well,
my decision.
the way to do it, in my view, is you just show the overlay, you show the floor plan layout and you just put pucks.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
But let's
one's
just-
moving to 4,
We
et
should be able to
cetera.
summarize this. If I'm incorrect, correct me. The rear window porch, on the porch right now, the left window, moves to the north side of the house and becomes the 2-gang window there. That's done with that. Now we have, the other window on the back porch stays where it's at. The wall gets infilled and the door goes in, a new door goes in to where the window was removed. That handles that side of the house. Tell me about the windows on the
South of it.
south elevation and how we're getting a third window and where's it coming from and where's it going?
Right, so the window that we're moving from the east elevation, as in the back porch, to the north elevation, where we're trying to create a pair. That existing window that we're creating, or trying to create a pair with, that existing window, which is historic, I would like to move to the south elevation, what's gonna be the kitchen, in between the 2 existings, where we're trying to create the triple windows. And
That's, you said no, so that's why I'm confused. You're taking the the north window now, that's there, you're gonna remove it, now I'm gonna have a hole there. Then I'm gonna cut another hole next to it, I'm gonna put 2 windows in there, one from the back porch, what's the other one gonna be?
the other one is from also the north elevation, right next to the front door, which is a like window, like the one from the back porch. So we would have 2 replacement windows on the same elevation next to each other. And then the
And
new
then what goes,
window,
and then what goes in the north?
the
and
new
then what goes
window,
in
the insulated window would go
On the front.
on that side the also north elevation next to the front.
Can you show us the north elevation
Yeah.
right now?
That's by the bottom of the landing of the stairs.
Do that too, yeah.
This is when, good slide decks obviate questions. Yes, there will be an exam on what the word obviate means.
This is the northern elevation right here.
So the west elevation, that's the front. So which one of these windows on the west elevation? No, you're saying the north elevation.
North elevation, so this window right here is, can you see yes, this is a historic existing window.
And that's gonna go where?
We're trying to take that out
And go to the south elevation with it.
and go to this location here.
Okay.
Because then we would have three original historic windows next to each other instead of putting
Okay,
something
okay.
else in there that is not really matching any of them. I mean, even if we get a
Yeah.
single pane replacement window, it's still not gonna match what's there.
Bottom line.
Unless that's not an issue.
Yeah, I think you created a mess myself, but look, I just want to say, long history I've been doing this. HBF nor this board in my 20 years of doing this have been very open about moving windows around and creating openings that didn't exist.
Mhm.
We're entertaining this today, and that's why I'm asking more questions to get full clarity on it, because I like the idea that we allow these things to happen, purposeful. I'm actually against putting a 3-gang window on the side of the house that never had one. That's the old part of the house. That's the physical change that was never approved in the past,
Mhm.
okay? HBS board seems to have got behind this. They have some weight in my mind. And so I'm gonna listen a little bit more till we get finished to see if that's appropriate or not. But I know why you're doing it, because of the kitchen layout. But see, that's the problem when people buy these historic houses, and then they want to adapt them to fit modern needs, and sometimes they screw them up. And I'm really worried that this house is gonna get screwed up. All right, so it's a very unique structure. And if the buyer who bought it had known that, they probably wouldn't be doing these extensive changes. So what's the board want to do with this?
Well, I think the changes that they're trying to make are as tasteful as can be in keeping with what they're trying to achieve and what the board is trying to achieve. I think they're trying to maintain the symmetry. They're trying to put I mean, it was very confusing, the egg scramble of windows, but the intent was to keep like with like, and then the ones that are getting new are gonna be true divided light windows. So, I mean, to me, there's a good faith effort to try and maintain this, the integrity of the structure. So I'm actually okay with it. I think that the march of time is impossible to go against. And so you're gonna have families that move in and they're gonna want more modern things in their homes. And you can't stop 100% of it. You've got to find a happy balance between, they want more light in the kitchen. Okay, well, how can we achieve that and still maintain the integrity of the structure and the historic nature of it and the 7 integrities and all that? And I think that this is a pretty good job of that. It was very confusing, but I think we got there.
Well, I mean, the issue I have goes back to it's unfortunate, but when you put a third window in, that means you're pulling those 2 windows. There's no headers there. You're gonna have to create a header across there. That means you're disturbing the entire wall section, both inside and out. You're also on a 0 lot line where you can be standing on your neighbor's fence trying to do this. So that bay window sticks off the house, actually hangs in the neighbor's yard, just so you know how tight those conditions are. But that's not relevant, just as a point of fact. I'm hoping the owner's very cautious about who bangs these windows into these houses. All right, what else we got? I think we understand the windows now.
I had other questions unrelated to that, but I'll let Mr. Woods say anything, because we've been taking up all the air in the room, if you have anything.
I tend to agree with the chairman on that third window. I think it's not. I'm surprised that
But I didn't realize they were moving an existing historic window. That was something that I don't think our committee was very
That
about.
came up after
Yeah.
the fact of
Oh,
how to
okay.
make them all match.
Okay, because that's what I said, we didn't discuss that.
Mm-mm.
But I think it makes sense, though. If you were
Yeah.
if you're gonna create an opening, that seems like the logical thing to do rather than have windows that don't match next to each other. So it's extra effort to do that, right? It's not like they're saving money by doing that. So to me, that seems like a good faith effort to try and keep things matching, and the aesthetic appropriate. I'm okay with it. That's my opinion. Where is the application? I didn't see the actual application in our packet.
I don't know what would be on it would help you on a short narrative.
No, I was just, yeah,
All right.
I just didn't see it. But one thing that is in the packets now that I love is the little timeline that they put in. I think is awesome to be able to see, okay, flash to bang, when did it start? The process and how long did it take to get here? But with regard to this one,
I think we had an application for the HTRC for sure, right?
it's not the application.
I know that's not your application, but Hmm?
Little blank of that.
an HRB.
I'd like to look to check the names and the dates, but
Okay.
as presented with the staff recommendations, I'm supportive. With the change to the Lincoln windows, I think makes sense. Being divided lights and not PVC.
Yeah, I don't get having one insulated window in a house that's got,
I don't think it'll make a difference.
technically it will. We never let anybody else do that in the historic house. Had to be all wood windows.
Well, the Lincolns are all wood windows, are they not?
They don't have true divided lights.
But they. Didn't they?
That was the confusion part. Did they have true divided lights in the Lincolns?
Just to add on, right, so there is also going to be the rear porch will be
Oh, that's
enclosed.
that screen
It will
porch.
be screened in. And the screen door that's currently that's at the rear door there, that's gonna be basically taken out. They're reusing that screen door on the new screened in enclosure as a door, okay? Just to let you know, that is in addition to that.
Mr. Chairman, this is
But
Jeremy
it shouldn't
Tate.
be a problem because it's really not visible from the street, so.
Yeah, I didn't have an issue with anything with the porch.
Oh, it's on an existing deck. It is the appropriate place to put one. If you're gonna do one, it's got a hip roof, it looks low profile, doesn't change the whole aesthetics of the rear of the property. So I'm supportive of the porch as well, screen porch. All right, so we have window moving around. We got some questions on the type of window, but then we have final door going in the rear
And then the colors.
and the colors. Don't get your head around that one, that'd be great. All right. So, what are we waiting on?
The new window is going on, sorry, is going on the north elevation? Okay. I don't think with anything next to it, with nothing next to it,
It
correct?
goes up there to the north, to the front of the building,
It's on the left side of the building as you look at it.
left front.
Yep, so that one being a Lincoln,
Well, it's the most visible windows. I mean, that's the irony of all this. You put the window at the front where you drive down the street, you can see that, but you can't see the other ones. I mean, like, okay.
yeah, I would say, like, we've approved those types of windows before. I don't see an issue with that window. I'm about to make a motion approving it as the staff recommendations. So if somebody has heartache over any part of it, I would, please make those specifics known.
Put up some window stuff real quick.
What are the other ones that are recommended? The heritage ones?
Well, Lincoln is a company that makes windows but there's a company called Victor that makes
That's
all
right.
vinyl, Victor, that makes all types of putty glazed, single strength glass windows. Those are the ones that are most appropriate. The problem we face in Beaufort is our humidity, and no new window today will last anywhere near the time that the existing windows. So that's why we push to keep people to save their windows, because the material's better. Now, you might have to reglaze it and re-glass it, but the most of 9% of the time they're repairable, you know, right? We went through that. But, okay,
That window that, is at the front is the replacement.
it's already been replaced once, right? The one at the bottom of the stairs when you go in? Yeah, okay. That's a good reason to look at that, because, I mean, we do get misrepresented on what things are in houses all the time. And because of Beaufort's history, things move around the town. So we get a window from this house, goes over to this house, and house gets torn down, somebody takes the windows and doors. So we see that happen a lot. In fact, this house is intact pretty well, the front part of the house, than it was. All right, I'm okay with staff recommendations at this point.
Yeah, I would not prefer that. I'll prefer that third window not be there, but I'm good with staff recommendation.
If HBF and staff is okay with the third window, I'm gonna live with it. I just, you know,
Well, unfortunate, but
call for a sink to be in the center, for no reason.
At my house.
Okay,
All right, well, I'll make a motion since I'm the motion guy. I'll make a motion to approve, with staff recommendations.
we have a motion on the table. Any other further debate? Don't see like anybody got the strength for any, so let's, move
He
on to a
starts
vote.
this time.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. I know that was painful, but sometimes we have to exercise all those little comments just to make sure we get it right. All right. And I would urge you, please, work with the builders. That house is fragile. They will never replace what's on the interior of that house.
And use pucks on slides.
All right, so we finished the agenda items. We either have a choice to adjourn. If y'all want to bring up the topic of the related to the board training and or confusion, we can clarify that now.
I have some time. I'd be okay with discussing, you're talking about whether or not, in terms of process, if there's a conservation easement, that discussion, or? did
No,
we
that
talk
was the
about
one I
that?
think that you wanted to talk, I wanted to talk about, but I just didn't want to talk about that particular project since the applicant wasn't here.
Well, I don't need to talk about that project. We could just talk about that conundrum in general. If there's a property with a conservation easement,
How do we know before it's too late is the question I have.
somebody would have to do some type of title abstract work. The only way that you'd find that out is through a title abstract. You should see it in Register of Deeds, should be filed. That would be the only way to find out. That's why I say I don't know. I mean, this is a question for attorneys, but my understanding is if I have a conservation easement and I get HBF to approve, that in and of itself is not enough for me to do construction on a property in the historic district. I also still have to get HRB's approval. If I go to the HRB and I get HRB's approval and I have a conservation easement, that still is not enough for me to do construction without HBF's approval also, if I have a conservation easement with them. I have to get approval from both to do construction if I'm in the historic district and I have a conservation easement. So if you just play it out, imagine you have a property, you don't go to HBF or whoever it is that holds the conservation easement, you get approval from HRB. They get a vested right from HRB, I would think, but that doesn't preclude them from liability from their easement. So if they then do construction that was not approved through HBF, let's say, HBF could sue them and say you have to undo it. And they would probably win, would be my guess. I'm not an attorney, but that would be my guess. The same is true in reverse. If they got approval from HBF to do something and they're in the historic district, they proceeded to execute that. A, they'd still have to get a building permit, and B, they'd still have to go to HRB. But if they did it without it, then they could still be subject to liability. But that time it would be from the city rather than from a nonprofit. But either way, it's on the owner to satisfy both requirements.
Yeah, we'll get that. I think it's interesting though, on your application for construction, there's a little checkbox that says, do you have is there any restrictions, like a covenants on the property? Does the owner know you're gonna do the work? Those things have to be checked. So
A lot of times owners don't know, even though they're supposed to
I
be.
know, so that's the problem I run into often, and that's what I ask applicants for my particular work. Do you have any easements on the property? Before you drag me down this long discussion about what you want to do to this house, do you have an easement? And 90% of the time, they have no idea.
Yeah, yeah.
And the realtors don't even know. So one question, maybe Ms. Sunderland, you can answer this, is there any reason why you couldn't generate a list of easements that the HBF holds and have that on file?
Already turned that into the city.
Okay, they have that already? So when it
And it's
gets.
already public record, so it's not
I
like.
understand that, but for, like.
No, but for, yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Somebody
yeah.
goes to HTRC,
Mhm.
somebody ought to be able to pull up the profile on that
Right.
property and go, well, there is an easement on this property. It'll be a red flag.
Yep.
So that they can say, have you satisfied this before we waste all this time getting this done, right? It'd be much better to send them to you guys to say, solve this, then come to us.
Yeah.
And there usually is, what happened at the last meeting,
Is that correct?
Mr. Nash said he didn't know anything about it.
Mm,
So, I had to then go and get it to him, and, so there was that, sort of going on. So we proceeded with HDRC just as a regular process, while I was able to then go get it and prove it to him. So that was a weird little kind of situation, with that one. But typically, yes, I'll know beforehand and I'll walk in there and the client knows and everything's good because we will have spoken to them. This is an anomaly this time.
Yeah, I think we're just relying on them and,
Yep.
we can start adding that to our
the only thing
list
that
of
would be a
things to do.
question.
So I apologize,
The only thing that would be a question for the city attorney would be, let's say he was here and he stayed and he presented. Or him or anybody, let's say the same thing happens again, and we decide, well, they still have to go to HBF, irrespective, we're gonna rule on it and we give approval. My assumption is that no, that does not create any liability for the city, but I could be wrong, so that would be a question.
Yeah, I don't think it does. I would agree with your comments from before. I think it's more of a
owner.
liability. He's creating a civil liability with, right,
Right.
him and HB, but we don't want to put people in that situation. That's why we were recommending, since they were not in support at this time of the project. That just puts him in a bad situation, and we know we're not trying to put people in bad situations, so.
Well, maybe, Ms. Sandra, at some point, we can have in one of our informal training sessions, a discussion about easements. We've had many sidebars about that over the years, and, I find it interesting that an easement on a smaller property in certain parts of the neighborhoods of the city, the value added and the encumbrance it adds on top of everything else. And who benefit, those kind of questions, I think ought to be brought to light so we can discuss it, and to say, what's going on here? Because you're only one nonprofit that can do easements. There's other entities that could, but I'd hate to see the city bogged down with easements all over the city.
Yeah,
That could be part of our fall,
you talk about easements.
when we decide on a fall tour, that could be a portion of it. And actually I had a recommendation from, someone else about, can there be some kind of, this kind of dovetails with, I think what you're saying is, can there be some kind of disclosure that, real estate agents provide to people within the historic district when they're buying a home?
It
like-
should be the attorney, it should be,
Or supposed, but apparently that's not happening, but it's just a thought, should we be contacting local real estate agents and giving them some kind of training or
Change heads.
Or- something like that, I suppose we could do that, but.
yeah, I would, frankly, I think that's on probably the attorneys, because typically it's the attorneys who are gonna do the abstract and find it. And so the attorneys, I mean, certainly, yeah,
I've
my
seen 'em-
opinion.
I've seen them sold and nobody knew.
That's true, but I think that is on the attorneys to find.
And the easement, as Eric knows, actually says within the easement that if you're going to put your property up for sale, you're supposed to notify us in writing and make sure that we have access to the buyer so that we can
Explain the,
explain the whole easement to them. So Eric and I have been through that discussion already, and so we do that with each of our folks. It's just for some reason, with this particular thing with Mr. Martin, he didn't remember, Mr. Nash didn't remember.
Well, we'll hopefully hear his application at some point. It sounds like a pretty straightforward one.
Yeah, very simple.
I mean, by code.
I don't think we have an issue with that, but
Permits, I mean.
Yeah.
it's on the rear of the building, so, you know, I think we're.
All right, well, anything from the staff of the board? Any future dates we need to be aware of?
No, I think maybe next month, since it'll be August and we might have the whole commission, we can start setting the time for a fall tour and maybe session, and we'll, you know, sounds like we want to add an easement discussion to that, so. Yeah,
These packets are great. I mean, you guys really
I think you can, I
obviously put a lot of time and effort into them and we
think
definitely
that's,
appreciate that.
you know, Christopher, you know, coming on board has definitely been the key to that, you know, I think.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
packets
before him,
before
it
he
was
was
just-
here, they were definitely not as thorough as they are now.
No, they're great. We appreciate, or I have certainly appreciated it. I'm sure everyone else here does.
Great.
Well, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We adjourned. Okay.